Hello and welcome to week one of SQL Fundamentals. And what I've done is I've kind of walked through a way to answer some of the questions. For your very first unit, you have Unit 1, Colonial Adventure Tour Exercises, page 57, exercises 1 through 3. And Unit 1, Solmaris, a condominium group, page 58, exercise 1 through 3. So what I've done is I've taken the time. There's a third set, which is a towel distribution database. And what I've done is I've taken kind of broken that down in how I go approaching the answers to these questions. So it's not kind of a surprise, oh, these are my requirements, this is what I have to go into. And I did this for the TAL database, and I actually answered the first question for the Colonial Adventure Tour exercise 1, so you have a much better idea, I hope, in how you go about doing this. So, as it says, the first step I would do is look up the figure that corresponds to the problem itself, that being figure 2-1. And when you read the problems, it will specifically state what figure you're working with. Now, what I did is I used my snippet tool, to actually grab out all the elements to the figure that I needed so I could see all the database. I could see the rep table, I could see the customer table, I could see the orders, the order line, and the items table. And then I actually took out a group of the data, the questions themselves, and I snipped a bit of that. And I tried to condense it all down on one page, so I was using my text to access the data and try to look up various things, as opposed to trying to go back and forth to, here's my form. Here's my questions. What form and or questions do I use? And it cut down on a lot of the confusion. Now, you can do whatever you choose to do, but I wanted you to just be aware of the steps that I took. Now, after that, I said, then I bring over the questions I had to work with, which you already saw me do. This puts your data and your questions in one easy to work with location. Make sure to explain and justify your answer. I have highlighted elements that would be included to thoroughly explain your response. So you're aware of, hey, not only do I have to answer the questions, but I have to tell me your thought process behind it. So I read the question. Indicate the changes using the shorthand representation that you need to make the original towel distributors database design, see figure 2-1, which we clipped down below, to support the following requirements. A customer is not necessarily represented by a single sales rep, but can be represented by several sales reps. When a customer places an order, the sales rep who gets the commission on the order must be in the collection of sales rep who represent the customer. So the very first thing I said, with the statement concerning one customer could be represented by many sales reps, it clearly indicates a one customer to many sales rep relationship. Additionally, this relationship must be enforced, meaning that in order for a sales rep to be given credit, he or she must be connected with a customer first, otherwise that sale simply cannot be made. And what that means is you have we have our two tables. We have the rep table and the customer table, and then we have what's known as a customer rep table. And so we take the rep table and the customer table. So we'll go down to our tables here. Here's our rep table and our customer table. And what we do is there's another table that we actually create in order to make these happen, and we call this the customer rep table. And what happens is this links both the customer number and the rep number and thus the combination of those things are unique. For instance, in my customer rep table with the sample data that I've created, customer number 126, 126, 126 is represented by rep number 15, 30, and 45. In the above table, Toys Galore, which is 126, and if I go down to 126, there's Toys Galore. Could only have sales entered for reps Raphael Campos, which is 15, Megan Gridley, 30, and Hui Tien, which I'm sure I mispronounced, 45. Brookings Direct, which is 260, could only have sales by Megan Gridley, 30. So the way you look at this is each customer is represented independently by one rep number. So you could have many repeats on the customer number, you could have many repeats on the rep number, but together they form it's a single entry that will have that particular customer number and that particular rep number. And you'll notice that if I was entering in sales that involved customer number 126 or Toys Galore, I couldn't enter in anybody but these 3 sales reps because those are the 3 that are assigned. And if they got a new sales rep, that doesn't mean that you can't enter in a sale. That means that you would have to enter them first into this table in some sort of data entry method that indicated, yes, they've been assigned that particular customer, and now we can make that particular change and enter in sales for that customer. You'll also notice in this particular case, Megan Gridley is the only person that can sell both the Brookings Direct and Toys Galore because she is in both places. There's Megan Gridley sales for Toys Galore, and there's Megan Gridley sales for Brookings Direct. You'll also notice that the rep, the customer, and this is a basic outline of the way the table works. So I've got my rep table, which is right here, and it's just my rep numbers and the last names, first name, street. And you'll notice in this version, the data is fairly normalized because of the fact that I'm not repeating any reps or any rep names or street, city addresses or anything like that, because the customer rep table only has one instance of the rep in it combined with one instance of the customer, and it's simply the number. So if I was going to have to update information on the rep, I would just go in here and I would update information on the rep. And then my customer numbers, it's the same way. You'll notice the only time I don't have repeat customer numbers as well as the name, the street, the city, the state, all of that is in this table. So if a customer happened to move their business, I could then readdress the address as appropriate. This is a level of normalization that prevents duplication on both these parts. And then I can take the customer rep number combined with the actual the sales rep number and correspond that to orders and enter in orders appropriately. So that'll give me the rest of the orders. Notice there's a customer number and the order line, which has the order number, the item number, the number ordered, as well as the items involved. So all those items that I've outlined, including this, would be necessary to answer number 1 in the TAL database. Now, I very much hope that helps, and I will continue with this same mode with the Unit 1, specifically dealing with the Colonial Adventure Tour exercises. Once again, this is kind of a walkthrough, number 1, and this is a walkthrough of that. So, I finished the TAL. Now let me go on to the next item, which is the Colonial Sample Database. Now, I will go ahead and give you a general idea. I've approached the same thing. I've grabbed the Colonial Adventure Tours. I've grabbed the Colonial Adventure Tours questions, and I've grabbed all the individual tables, the guide, the trip guides continued, the trip, the reservation, the customer. Now, in the Colonial Adventure Tours, number 1, it says, using the types of entities found in the Colonial Adventure Tours database, trips, guides, customer, and reservations, create an example of a table that is in first normal form, but not in second normal form, and an example of a table that is in second normal form, but not in third normal form. In each case, justify your answers and show how to convert to the higher forms. Now, this involves a bit of precognition because you're trying to determine or think about, okay, what tables would be only normalized in the first normal form? What would be in the second normal form? And in order to go about doing this, you really have to understand what the first normal form is. It says, when addressing question number 1, I would first have to determine the difference between the levels of data normalization. Simply put, data normalization is a process by which problems are eliminated or potential problems, specifically with data redundancy and duplication and implementation fixes. Basically, I make sure that I don't enter the same data twice in the database. Okay, if I keep track of students, it would make sense to have a student ID, which serves to link all our data together, and have different tables that could be linked using student IDs, such as student personal information, first name, last name, phone numbers, and other one-off information related to that particular table, so it can be updated one place and drawn from one place. And the idea behind that is, for instance, if I'm running a university, I'm going to have my student entered multiple times. If every time I enter my student, I have to put in the first name and the last name and all the personal information of the student, especially when I was doing, let's say, student schedules. Well, if I had to enter that all in, I would have multiple instances of first name and last name. I'd have huge amounts of data redundancy. And when I went to update the first name or the last name of that particular student, I would be stuck with, oh my gosh, now I have to update however many records there are, and there would inevitably be mistakes. So in this particular case, we have the orders and then how we're actually going to convert it. You'll notice our original order had the order number with all the items numbers that were added. The problem is if I wanted to get at this individual item number and I want to get at this individual number ordered, it can get, we could do it, but it gets kind of complex and we have kind of issues where that's concerned. So what we're doing is we're taking this orders table and we're converting it to first normal form, meaning now we have an order number, an item number, and num ordered, as well as the order date. So basically, for instance, if I look at order number 51610 for 10/12/2015, now I've got 51610 in here twice, but the item numbers are different. So KL78, TR40, and they're different lines, so each line only has one bit of data. So notice we changed the table so that the combination of order number and item number are unique together, whereas in figure 2-7 right here, we could have multiple items, numbers in one order, thus preventing us from making it difficult to pull a query. And then what we have is our conversion to our second normal form. And in this particular example, and I'll get kind of closer to it so you can see what I'm talking about, you've got an order number, an order date, an item number, and a description. Now, in this particular case, I would make sure, because what's going to happen is I've got one individual who's ordered item number CD33, 33, and it's woodblock set 48. Now I've got NL89, which is also woodblock set now 62, and I might, but if I have one different person order this same item number, I could be repeating descriptions. So what I want to do is I want to break this whole thing up so I'm not repeating descriptions. So the way I do that is I might have an order number and an order date. I have an item number and a description. Notice my item number right here and my description is right here, but I only have one instance of that description. So if I was going to go in and update that description later on, I wouldn't have to change all the possible times. So for instance, this says giant star brain teaser. Try to see if there's not another example of that. But if somebody had ordered item number DR67 67 times and the description of that item was in the order table, I would have to find all 67 instances of that particular description and make the change, which is it has a better chance of having human error issues. It has a better chance of having redundancy issues. Obviously, it's redundant to begin with, or you can only update parts of them, not all of them. Somebody say, well, I can do a search and find, but what happens if someone doesn't capitalize something the right way or puts an extra space? And there's all kinds of issues that happens with that. Whereas right here, I'm only ever going to have one instance of this particular description corresponding to this particular item number. Then what's going to happen is in my orders, I have an order number, and then I have an order date. And over here in my order line, I have what order number corresponds. For instance, there's 51610. 51610 now has two items associated with it, which are very similar to our orders. 51610 right here has those two items associated. They have their own particular lines. Outstanding. And if I wanted to merge that with the description, I would just grab this out and grab it from here. Notice in our particular example, none of these item numbers repeat, but if they were, the description becomes very, very important because of the fact we're not duplicating that data. All right, well, I think you got generally the point.